मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदस्य मणिस्थ श्रुतं मे मा प्रहसीः अनेनाधीतेनाहुरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ May my speech be firmly established in my mind. May the mind too be firmly established in my speech. O self-effulgent Lord, be revealed in my consciousness. May the truths from the scriptures come to me. May not what I learn from them ever forsake me. Let me live my life day and night according to their teachings. I shall speak what is appropriate. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om peace, peace, peace. Let us remember and hold on to our true identity. This self or God is our true identity. Let us feel that identity as a steadily burning candle flame. The body. I am not connected to it nor its connections. I have no children or parents or spouse. I am divine, pure light of consciousness. the universal effulgence, pure. I am bliss itself. I am the truth. Om. Peace, peace, peace. So friends, welcome back after gap of 1 week to this great book, Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play. Let us begin with our regular chant. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadattatam Bhuvi grinanti te Bhurida janaha. We have been discussing about how the grace of Sri Ramakrishna on Mathur Babu changed his nature, brought him to a life that is spiritual and therefore satisfying. He was, as we saw, a tremendously wealthy person, and as wealth brings a sense that I am superior to others, a somewhat arrogant attitude. So he had that too. Having had education in the that modern style, he had become skeptic about spirituality. Though he was at the temple, his life was not at all devotional, so to say. He would come to temple more to manage the place as administrator. And not that the devotion was absent, but it was all shrouded or covered in the worldliness. And so, by touch of Sri Ramakrishna, it started changing. As we saw in the last chapter, that he saw in Sri Ramakrishna the Kali and Shiva, the gods, the god of, say, Kali, the mother aspect of the universe, mother aspect of the divine, and the conscious aspect, the Shiva and Kali, he sees in Sri Ramakrishna. And he was gradually looking at the devotion of Sri Ramakrishna, his renunciation, his truthfulness, he became just completely devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, surrendered to Sri Ramakrishna. And the life then had taken a change. This is an example that the author has kept before us, that there are of course so many different devotees in whose life the touch of Sri Ramakrishna brought about a wonderful transformation. There are books, one very nice book that the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, that is a nice book. Apostles of Sri Ramakrishna is another similar book. And then there are Chetananda's book, They Lived with God. So there it is, the description of how Sri Ramakrishna's touch changed the life of people towards more spiritual, satisfying life. The reason is quite obvious, that when our life is just tied to material, there is nothing to feel much satisfaction or happiness about, because that is actually not what we are. So it really tires us, makes us unhappy and frustrated. But when life is tied to the reality within, then the unchanging aspect becomes manifest in us. Our true identity becomes manifest in us. And thus, the false identity is now, it wanes, that I am this body or I am this mind. These are false identities. And if we are stuck with them, then we suffer, because those things change, the body changes, and therefore we see that everything as it were is slipping from our fingers. We try to hold something that cannot be held on to, basically. And that which by very nature is going to change, how can you hold on to it? It becomes different. And not only that, while it is becoming different, it gives us a blow, a very harsh blow, that we were banking upon its being with us, or constantly remaining in the same state. It does not. It changes. And as it changes, its form that we were familiar, as it were, slips from the hands. And thus we suffer. When we get united or tied with the unchanging aspect of ours, then we cannot be separated from it. Then we don't actually want to be separated from it, because it does not change. It is real. It is real. Something that is real will be satisfying, what we can hold on to. You cannot hold on to that which is unreal. Hold on to my job. How long will it, you can hold on to the job? There is a retirement age, or even if it is not there, your performance will not be as good, or you will fall sick. So you will not be able to hold on to it. It is a changing something. The body changes, and the nature of the job also changes. You cannot hold on to it permanently. What can you hold on to? That which does not change, and that is the self. So that is how the association with Sri Ramakrishna changes the life. Life that is centered around material is changed to life that is centered around the truth, spirit, or God. So, this is the transformation that came in Mathur's life, and it comes to our life as well when we hold on to Sri Ramakrishna. It was asked, a question was asked, I think, a week ago, more than a week ago, that a listener in New York asked me that what those days Sri Ramakrishna touched people, and that brought about transformation. Without physical touch, tangible physical touch of such persons, how can that transformation in us come? It is Sri Ramakrishna should be here, then only the touch will come, otherwise it will not. The answer to it is twofold. That first thing is that Sri Ramakrishna is present even now, right here, right here, friends. Sri Ramakrishna's about this Swami Vivekananda said that to now bestow grace all over the world, Sri Ramakrishna has changed his body to the organization, Ramakrishna Order. This organization now has become body of Sri Ramakrishna. So, when you are coming here or you are being here, please try to remember that you are in touch with Sri Ramakrishna. You are in touch with Sri Ramakrishna. You can't get away from that. Sri Ramakrishna, with his intense desire to bestow the grace on all people, has expanded the body. Not that he is died, but he has expanded the body to a big universal one. So that is one understanding, one way we have to look at this. In addition to that, we also must see that we need to absorb the essential aspect of Sri Ramakrishna's that taking up the body, that he, although is in the body, he is not of the body. He is completely and always united with the Spirit. And that is why those who could not think of Sri Ramakrishna like that, they did not get the desired effect of Sri Ramakrishna's company. It was like that they went to a physician diagnosed their problem and gave a prescription that this is the exact medicine for you. Take it and your disease will go. I take that prescription. Maybe I buy the pills also and never take it. Then it doesn't affect me. It doesn't improve my condition. So many, Swami Saradananda at other place, Saradananda, the author of this book, at other place says that he has seen so many people coming to Sri Ramakrishna, but since they did not come with this idea, this attitude. Many who have seen Sri Ramakrishna did not have any change in their life. So even if Sri Ramakrishna is in that physical form is present here, we will not get the benefit of it because we just did not take the medication. Thought that, what's there, or threw it away. And so therefore it is very important to take that medication of his teachings, that the light that emanates from him, that needs to be absorbed in us. As it gets absorbed, we see our life changes to a more illumined one. So this is the example that is Mathur Babu. We have this, so many like that are there, but one example will be sufficient. That another teaching that we will see in this, that the transformation may not be all 100% in everyone, depending on the intensity of that spirit of renunciation and God realization, desire for God realization. The results will vary, and we can see that also in Mathur's story, and therefore this story is so important. Swami Saradananda, in writing this biography, has chosen certain prototypes. That one of them is this Mathur Babu. Mathur Babu was a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna, and his life did undergo tremendous change. But not just Mathur Babu, of course there are so many, and we can count ourselves as one of those who are coming in touch with Sri Ramakrishna. We are in close touch with Sri Ramakrishna. Let us remember this, that right here Sri Ramakrishna is, and that is truth, friends. So let us try to see that Sri Ramakrishna is looking at us, watching us as we continue reading this story, that how Mathur Babu this changed because of the touch of Sri Ramakrishna. We had seen some incidents, and now this chapter 7, as a guru the master bestows grace on Mathur. We started this reading this chapter last time, and now let us read from page 501, that when this worship of the Divine Mother has been going on, and Sri Ramakrishna has been living at that time, not in Dakshineshwar. He had come to stay with Mathur Babu at his palatial house in the Jan Bazar locality of Kolkata. So he has come there, and then the worship of the Divine Mother is going on, and it is described, the day's worship was over. Mathur and his wife took a little time to joyfully offer flowers at the feet of the Divine Mother and the Father. It was here Father would be in this context connoting Sri Ramakrishna. It was because that is how they used to address Sri Ramakrishna, Baba. Baba. Although Sri Ramakrishna was in age was not much any older than them, but especially he was not older much to Mathur Babu. I don't exactly know the dates, but he was not much older. Sri Ramakrishna. But both of them, Mathur and his wife, would address Sri Ramakrishna as Baba, which would mean like father. It was evening, and the Vesper service of the Divine Mother was about to begin. The father was then in the inner apartment, having in his ecstasy completely forgotten his male body. His words and behavior expressed that he was a maid or female confidante of Divine Mother, and had been so birth after birth in every age. The Divine Mother was his heart and soul, and his all in all. He had been born to serve her. His face was his force radiated love and emotion, and the sweet smile on his lips, the gaze of his eyes, the movement of his limbs, and even his gestures were like those of a woman. The master was wearing a silk cloth that Mathur had given him, and he had wrapped it like a sari. Who could say then that he was a man? The master's complexion was so bright that it seemed his beauty would burst forth. When he was in ecstasy, his complexion would become brighter, and a light seemed to emanate from his body. When people saw his beauty, they could not turn their eyes away, and they looked at him in wonder. So that was what was happening there. He was putting on the garments, the clothes like that of a woman, and the splendor of the divine within was expressing itself through his personality. It is to be noted that Sri Ramakrishna was as such at that time his body was looking very lustrous. It has been described, and we'll read that the Holy Mother told us that the Master's complexion blended with the color of the gold amulet that he used to wear at all times, which contained a mystical mantra. We also heard from the Master. At that time my beauty became manifest in such a way that people would stare at me. My face and chest were always crimson, and a luster would emanate from my body. Because people stared at me, I would cover myself with a thick chadar, that is shawl. I would pray to the Divine Mother, "Take away my external beauty, O Mother, and give me inner beauty." I used to pass my hand over the body and slap it again and again, saying, "Go within, go within." After some days, my skin turned pale, as you see it now. So this was the earlier days, the external beauty of Sri Ramakrishna's physique. And he abhorred it because people would get attracted by that. This is completely opposite to the behavior of normal people who want not only their physical beauty to shine and noticed by people around, they also try to do many things so that it will look beautiful, it will look attractive. So, but Sri Ramakrishna did the reverse. When and so one incident has been told here, we will read that, about how that physical beauty was it was appearing as a result automatically of the the external physic body becoming kind of transparent and therefore luminous. This change in the body is very rare to that extent, but it is through the cover of the body, as it were, when it is full of tamas, then it does not radiate the the beauties or the splendor of the soul. It is a mystic idea, friends, not that it is, some of these are verifying instances of it. Even one can see that the body kind of starts shining when there is the spiritual upsurge in a person. There is no external beautifying process that has been taken up, but just the shining of the inner splendor due to the transparency of this physic. That is how one can see it is seen in many cases. So therefore, in a poetic way presenting the picture, they show an aura around the bodies, the head of the saints. There is an aura. It is not something physical, but shines forth through the physic. It is the transparency, spiritual transparency, not the physically. The skin is by a plastic surgery or something is now made different, more transparent, lighter. Nothing like that. It is the spontaneous manifestation of the inner spirituality, the light within, as it is mentioned many times. The light within manifest because the tamas, the darkness in the body and mind is reduced. It has become almost nil, and so it comes out, as it were, that although cannot be explained by physical science, that okay, let us measure the luminosity. I don't think it can be measured like that, but yet there is the impact of it. Certainly it is not, I don't think there is like they measure the how much is the luminosity of these different light fixtures here, but that is not a luminosity that can be measured in that way. It is a spiritual luminosity, and that was how Sri Ramakrishna's body looked so beautiful, as it were lighted, and people would stare at him. People cannot take their eyes away from him. So that was the case. Holy Mother told us that Master's complexion blended with the color of the gold amulet. We have heard from the Master. At that time the beauty became manifest in such a way that people would stare at me. We recall another incident of the Master's life in connection with his physical beauty. At that time the Master used to stay in Kamarpukur every year for 3 or 4 months during the rainy season. This is otherwise he was in Dakshineshwar, but these 3-4 months in rainy season he would stay at Kamarpukur, his native village. While in Kamarpukur, the master would sometimes visit Hriday's home. Hriday was his attendant. Hriday's home, his nephew and attendant. So, that his home used to be in Shihar, a place not too far from there, from Kamarpukur or from Jairambati. The road to Shihar goes through Jairambati near his father-in-law's house. So at the request of the Holy Mother's family and the villagers, he would spend a few days with them also. Hriday, the master's devoted attendant, was always with him and served him in every possible way. Whenever the master was in Kamarpukur, the villagers would crowd his home from morning to evening to see him and to hear a few words from his lips. In the morning, the neighborhood women would finish cleaning and sweeping their homes and come to Haldar Pond for their bath. They would first stop at the master's house, leaving at the ghat the pitchers they had brought for carrying the water home. They would spend an hour or so talking with the master and the women of his family and then go for their baths. This happened every day. If someone had made any fancy sweet the night before, she would save the first portion for the master and bring it to him the next morning. Seeing those women arriving at dawn, the fun-loving master sometimes jokingly said to them, in Vrindavan, the gopis would meet Krishna at different times in different ways. A pasture meeting took place when the gopis went to the Jamuna to get water. The twilight meeting occurred when the Krishna returned home after grazing the cows. The rasa meeting came about at night when the gopis would dance in a circle around Krishna and so on. So may I ask you if this is your bath time meeting? Bath time meeting. The women would roll with laughter at this. When the women left to cook lunch and perform other household tasks, the men would come to the master and talk to him as long as they could. The women could return in the afternoon, then the men would come again in the evening. So many people around who were closely associated with the family. They were attracted again and again to come to see Sri Ramakrishna. And then this incident happened. Once, while the master was in Kamarpukur, arrangements were made for his visit to Jairambati and Shihar. Because the master was constantly in Bhava Samadhi, his limbs were as delicate as those of a boy or a woman. He could not walk even a short distance and needed a palanquin or a carriage to carry him. A palanquin had been arranged A palanquin had been brought for the trip to Shihar via Jairambati, and fastened his gold amulet around. Oh, sorry. Hriday was also there to go. After lunch, the master put on a scarlet silk cloth and fastened the gold amulet around his arm. His lips were crimson from chewing betel. As he was about to go into the palanquin, he noticed that a large crowd had gathered on the street nearby. Seeing so many men and women around, the master asked Hriday in asked Hriday in wonder, Hriday, what is the reason for this crowd? Hriday, for what else? You are going away and they, pointing to the crowd, want to see you for won't be seeing you for some days, so they have come to have a parting look at you. The master says, but they see me every day. What new feature has attracted them as such large numbers today? Hriday, you look so handsome in that silken cloth, and your lips shine with crimson color. That is why they want to see you. As soon as the master heard that those people were attracted to his physical beauty, an unusual mood filled his mind. He thought, alas, these people are preoccupied by his external, ephemeral, physical beauty. No one wants to see God who is within. He had abhorred physical beauty and abhorred physical beauty beforehand, but this incident increased that aversion 1,000-fold. What? He exclaimed. People are gathering just to look at a man? I won't go. Wherever I go, people will crowd about like this. In utter disgust, the master returned to his room and took off the silk cloth. Filled with humility, the master did not go to Jairambati and Sihar that day, in spite of the entreaties of Hriday and others. He did not go out at all. Just imagine, O reader, how this unique person was repelled by his body and felt it to be insignificant. This is a lesson that we see how the difference is. We try to make our body more attractive, which Sri Ramakrishna, it was all opposite, because he wanted people to get attracted to spiritual being and not to the physical body. So he then said, how busy are we meticulously grooming and dressing the body? What an abundance of cosmetics and other accessories we use, mirrors, combs, razors, etc. Imitating the West, we rush headlong every day to ruin ourselves by lavishing more indulgence on this cage of flesh and bones, thus increasing our delusion. O reader, one is physically near and dear and mentally pure, and the other is obsessed with body and its beauty. Uh, are they the same? However, let us return to our story of the master in Jan Bajar. This at that Durga Puja was going on in Jan Bazar. So it was just showing that how Sri Ramakrishna's body looked so beautiful at that time, those days. The Vesper service at the Divine Mother was about to begin, but the Master's ecstatic mood did not cease. Jagadamba, that is Mathur's wife, thought that she should somehow try to bring the Master down to a normal state, then go to attend Vespers with other women of the family. But when she saw that his samadhi would not end, she felt that it would not be proper to leave him alone. She was at a loss. She pondered, what should I do? If I go and I leave someone else to look after the father, that person will run to the worship hall as soon as the music for Vespers begins. But the father is totally incapable of caring for himself when he is in samadhi. Once he fell onto a pan of burning charcoal while in his ecstatic state and was not conscious of it. That wound healed only after a long time with various treatments. If I leave him alone and another such mishap occurs on the festive occasion, how would I face it? And what would my husband think? Thus returning, a solution suddenly arose in her mind. She hurriedly brought her precious jewelry, and while adorning the father, and with it she repeatedly said into his ears the mantra, Father, let's go, it is time to wave the lights. Won't you come and then and fan Mother Durga? So she kept on saying and entreating the father, that is Sri Ramakrishna, like this. And she was able to get him there. We have described that when Master went into deep samadhi while thinking of a particular deity or while in a particular spiritual mood, he would lose all outer consciousness and his mind would be far away from persons, objects and ideas that were not related to the deity. But if someone repeated into his ears the name of that deity or words pertaining to the glorious nature of that deity, immediately his mind would be attracted to that sound and would return to the normal conscious plane. Yeah, this is a phenomena that was observed in Sri Ramakrishna's life multiple times. In fact, he himself had told that if I go into samadhi like this, then utter this particular mantra or this particular sound, this name of God, and then I will come on the normal plane. And therefore, if he would go into samadhi thinking of, say, Lord Krishna, or the child Krishna, Gopala, and if somebody they started singing the name not conducive to that, like says chant the name of Divine Mother, that would give him lot of pain, because it is a different mood, and so he will not be able to come to samadhi, out of samadhi by something else. In fact, it would be painful. So therefore, they would chant that name, so that thinking that external and internal to be similar, that would make him aware that whatever he is feeling inside is also there outside. So he would now come out of samadhi without any difficulty. This is an important idea, friends, that if you are doing something, and then if you are told that come on, let's go, but you would not go because you are busy doing something that, and you are finding lot of joy while doing that, so you won't leave. But if it is conveyed to you that no, while if you go out, still you will be able to do it. Same thing outside also you can do it. Then that person says, okay, that would be all right then. So Sri Ramakrishna, when the same word is heard outside, would come out from that state of trance, and would be able to discuss with people, but not completely out of it. It is he is still not completely out of the trance state for some time. This is described in this book as this half outside state, ardha bahya dasha, that his state is bahya, means outside. He is conscious of the outside elements, outside things, but not fully. He is still aware more of the inner reality rather than the outer images. So that is how his awareness was described. That the concentrated mind functions in this manner has been recorded briefly, if not in detail, in the yoga scriptures by Patanjali and others. It will not take long for the reader who is well versed in the scriptures to understand that characteristic of the master's mind. Those whose virtue has allowed them to experience a little concentration of the mind will easily understand this phenomena. Let us therefore continue our main story. The words of Jagadamba reached the master's ears. Immediately he came to his senses to some extent, and then in a semi-conscious state joyfully walked with her. As soon as they reached the worship hall, the Vesper service started. Surrounded by women, the master used a chamara to fan the image of the mother. We have that chamara, the fan. On Sunday evenings you see that while the Vesper service is going on, one of the rites is this chamara or the fan being waved. So that was going on. Women stood on one side of the hall, the men, including Mathur, stood on the other. All were watching the Vespers. Suddenly Mathur's eyes fell on the women, and he saw a stranger, adorned with gorgeous clothes and ornaments, standing next to his wife, fanning the Divine Mother. Despite looking again and again, he would not recognize her. He thought that she might be a friend of his wife, or the wife of a wealthy man who had perhaps come at her invitation. So that is how Mathur was seeing. He could not recognize Sri Ramakrishna. Vespers was over. After bowing down to the Divine Mother, the women returned to their living quarters and began their household duties. Because the master was still in a semi-conscious state, he returned with Jagadamba to the inner apartment. Gradually, he became completely normal and removed all the jewelry. He went to the parlor to sit with the men, where he discussed religious topics and charmed them with his clear explanations and apt illustrations. After a while, Mathur went to the inner apartment and by and by asked his wife, "During Vespers, who was standing next to you fanning the deity?" Jagadamba replied with a smile, "What? You did not recognize him?" It was the father in an ecstatic mood who was fanning. It is quite understandable that you did not recognize him. When the father is dressed like a woman, it is hard to recognize him as a man. Dumbfounded, Mathur said, "This is why I say that even in trifling matters, no one can know the Father if he doesn't allow himself to be known. Look, I live with the Father 24 hours a day, and still I did not recognize him." So that was how Sri Ramakrishna's the behavior would change. Not just the dress would change, but all the features specific to women would come there. He would be looking like a woman. The way of speaking, moving, and doing things will change to such an extent that it would be difficult to recognize him. And this example is told about Mathur, who was so closely associated, would be seeing him for a long time every now and then, and now he was staying right at their home, and still he could not recognize Sri Ramakrishna. We shall continue the discussion that how during this worship of the Divine Mother, Sri Ramakrishna tells Mathur how the mother is to be worshipped from within. A very telling, illustrative story. We will discuss it in our next class by the grace of Sri Ramakrishna. We will meditate for 30 seconds, and in case if there is a question, you may ask. Yes, please. Oh, yes, Charlie.
Why did Jagadamba put jewelry on Sri Ramakrishna, and why did he allow her to? Because he usually wouldn't touch something like that.
Well, that is a good question. That because the worship of Divine Mother was going on, and then on Divine Mother, so much of jewelry is put, and she was seeing Sri Ramakrishna also as a likeness of Divine Mother, and so and Sri Ramakrishna was not much aware of what is being put on. So therefore, when he became conscious of that, he took it out. But otherwise, it was all put on. He was sitting in samadhi, so not aware of being a particular person that they will be looking on. So therefore, he let it happen. It was not his choice as such. So that is how in samadhi he has no conscious control of what's happening. There are many instances that he put his foot on somebody's lap in samadhi, and then the others who didn't understand that said, that Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar, this is not good to do. This is not right thing to do. Now Sri Ramakrishna was saying, well, I do not know at that time. It is not that I am doing it, but you should exercise control and stop it. Now it was difficult for Sri Ramakrishna to explain. So he tells the Narendranath who was there, please, tell him something. So it is in that state, it was all Sri Ramakrishna was being treated as the personification or the human form of Divine Mother, and so was put adorned with all ornaments. So let us conclude with our closing prayers. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.